Learning disabilities are often invisible disabilities that affect the way someone learns and the way their brain works. Something that a lot of kids struggle with, even adults struggle with, is how to navigate the challenges that a learning disability gives them. Our next guest today on the Falling for Learning podcast tells us how she navigated these challenges and how she achieved goals that people in her life told her that she wasn't able to achieve. Stick around for this show so you can find out how to give your child the competitive advantage no matter what disability they may be facing. Hi, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. I am TD Flenaugh. We have this podcast to help parents and caregivers with having the resources, strategies, and tools needed to make sure that their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Hello, Michelle Steiner. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
Doing great. It is summertime, and I have been on a little vacation. My very close cousin, my sister cousin, is celebrating her 50th birthday, and so we had a cruise. We had like all kinds of celebrations for her, and so I am really feeling relaxed and great now that I'm in the summer months. How about you? How has your summer been so far?
It's been going well. It's nice having that little break from school. We've been celebrating birthdays and our anniversary and just different things and being on a podcast and just enjoying the summer.
Excellent. So, a question that we ask all of our guests that come on the Falling for Learning podcast
hmm
is what made you fall in love with learning as a child?
What made me fall in love with learning as a child was my dad found a story that I wrote about a dinosaur whenever I was young.
Oh,
And he said, "This is really good." And he would read me stories every night when I was little. And I just started to love reading and I started to love writing. And that was so important to me because up until that point, I was really frustrated in school and I didn't think I was good at anything. And reading and writing really became my world.
okay. And so that is great. Just seeing that your
Thank
dad
you.
has complimented something about you and that helped you to latch on to something that you felt good about, you felt confident with. Tell us
hmm
about some of your educational experiences that help lead to the work that you do today.
I was diagnosed with a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten.
Mm,
I can remember just really being in school and being frustrated in the classroom. My teacher noticed that I was really struggling whenever I was there. I struggled with math. I struggled with a lot of um, things with writing my name. I also had a great difficulty just with learning, and anything math related was really difficult for me. And I was diagnosed with a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten. And I had to repeat the grade and I had to go to a different school, and it still was a public school in our district, but I had to do that, and school was a real struggle for me. I struggled to learn. I just wanted to be accepted by my peers, so I also struggled socially as well, and it was
okay.
just really difficult for me with that. And I just didn't think I was good at anything. But luckily, as I went throughout school, I started to be in more regular ed classes. I was in all regular ed classes except for math and resource whenever I was in school. And socially, though, it got a lot harder for me. A lot of my peer groups became more defined, and I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And I found a group that was right outside of our school district that was not as affiliated with our school, and I
Okay.
didn't have peers that went there, so I was able to find other friends that had similar interests, and I could shed that reputation that followed me for all those years. And when I stopped hanging out with that group, I started to hang out with another group that I was involved with. And it was an adult writing group. And 30 some years later, we still meet once a month to talk about our writing, and we're in each other's lives. And they really encouraged me. You should write about having a learning disability. But I thought, oh, no, that's too personal. And I wrote some really bad poetry and some other stuff I wouldn't want to read today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I think something we have to highlight is finding that specific
Hmm.
group for your child is
Yes.
really important. They may, and I want to say, like how you said your family found something outside of your school. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not at the school. Sometimes you can change schools. Sometimes you can't, but you might be able to look
Yeah.
outside of the school to find activities that
Hmm.
will help spark some joy for your child, help them find a friend group, find their
Yep.
people, So that is so good that you've brought it up, and hopefully we're taking those things to heart as we're some of us out there are trying to struggling
Hmm.
with how do we support our kids.
I began to receive specialty instruction, and I also began to have accommodations as well in the classroom. And learning was really hard, especially in the very beginning. I really struggled. I just wanted to learn like my peers, and I just wanted to have all that, and it just wasn't coming together very easily for me. And I also wanted to be accepted. And I was also bullied from a very young age. I went to a very small conservative school district where I couldn't hide that I was struggling in the classroom. I couldn't camouflage that I went to learning support to have classes or to have a test read to me or to have extra time on tests. It was just really difficult for me. And it started very early on with that. I even struggled when I was in learning support because most of my peers struggled with reading, some behavior issues. Sadly, some of them had trauma backgrounds. And I know there was also students in my class that looking back, I don't think they had learning disabilities. Some of them had autism and other things, and we just didn't know
Mm.
what to do. So they just dumped them in the class. As I got throughout school, though, it got a lot easier for me academically. We figured out that I could read really well and I could learn as long as it wasn't involving math or handwriting. That was something. Typing changed a lot of that as
Okay.
well. Or
Can you
yeah,
so your disability they found out, can you tell us what it was or what they called it?
sure. Whenever I was young, they just said that I had a learning disability.
Okay.
That's how it was explained with my parents.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
And so then as you got older, you're saying that you could noticed it was more about math. So did he have like another diagnosis for it or something more specific now?
They didn't give it anything more specific as I went throughout school.
Hmm.
They didn't find out a lot of the other things. I mean, they knew visual perception was another thing as well, but we always knew math was going to be my big challenge. And I can remember they tried putting me in a regular ed math and even a basic class, and I just didn't do well. So I ended up
Okay.
back in learning support. But one thing that they found out really did work was if I could be in all regular ed classes by the time I was in high school, except for math and a resource room. And I was doing really well. I made honor roll. I had good grades. Um, but I mean, the bully, it got harder for me socially though, whenever I was in those higher grades. I can just remember the peer groups were more defined and I just didn't feel like I fit in with anybody
Right.
and it was hard. So what I ended up doing was I found a group outside of our school district. It was an arts based group, and I found people that didn't go to my school, and they accepted me for who I was. They didn't know that I had the disability, and when I later shared I did, I found out there was other people that had that. And whenever I stopped hanging out with that group, I found an adult writing group that 20 some years later, we still meet every Saturday I mean,
Oh.
once a month to talk about our writing and we're in each other's lives. And that really made the difference for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I just want to
yeah.
highlight a lot of, parents and
Hmm.
caregivers, educators, like helping a kid find a place, something that they really love to do, and find
Hmm.
like a peer group that they could do that with is really pivotal in a lot of kids' lives. And so that's something that, if you're not sure how to support your kid, that could be one thing is like help them try to connect to what they like, really take notice of what they do well Like you were
Mhm.
saying, like you may not be good at math, but you got your compliments about your reading or your writing, and that really helped you to find a friend group as well. So sometimes they don't know per se. You may have to point it out and give them compliments, and then they might gravitate towards something, but it doesn't happen right away, but it's something that you could be looking out for sure. So thank you for
Yes,
highlighting that.
definitely. Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did tell me that you did have some people telling you that you wouldn't be able to do certain things. Like, I don't know,
Right.
who are those people that told you those things? Like, what kind of role did they have in
Sure.
your life? And then what were those things they were telling you couldn't do?
Well, I had a learning support teacher who told me that I couldn't handle going to college because of my math. And she was telling me that I should just go to a trade school, but nothing that really interested me. So I decided that wasn't going to be a wise choice. So I decided I wanted to go to college. I had a psychiatrist who told me that I would not most likely not go beyond community college, and that was really discouraging. And when I got to community college, I had an advisor who told me that I would have limited job choices because of my math. And I also had people that just didn't think that even using disability accommodations was right. Some people thought that they were cheating. I can remember I had a professor that said that when I asked, can I use a calculator in this class? And she said, well, we use our brains in this room, not calculators.
Yeah. So people's attitudes toward disabilities, and then like those special accommodations that are needed, are sometimes a
Hmm.
challenge. I think hopefully as we are we're evolving as a society and everything, that we're more understanding. Our families may run into some of these barriers, and so it's good to be
Hmm.
aware of it so you could help prepare your child for it and really be able to circumvent these, challenges that come up. What made you keep going when you're even hearing from other people like, probably not, Michelle, not able to do this? Like, what kept you going?
I did have one person was really encouraging. I had a student teacher when I was in high school that told me, you can go to college because you know how to study. And that sometimes I would hear that voice whenever I was at school when it
Right.
was hard. I also was really blessed to have parents that were there for me as well and understood that. And I also had great friends that they couldn't fix the problem, but they could be my friend throughout everything. And I think that's really key in life is to have that.
Something for our audience to really take away from this is like helping your kids find a good friend group, good friends,
Mhm.
identify good friends, and really being encouraging of your kids despite whatever, setbacks or shortcomings that they may have, right?
Yep,
Is really, really
exactly.
important. So that kept you going. And so tell us about, your education level that you were able to achieve despite different people saying, no, not Michelle, not able to handle it.
I was able to get my bachelor's degree, and that came as a real surprise. After I got my associate's degree, I moved out on my own. After a while, I had some temp jobs. I'm not able to drive because of my disability, so it was really nice that I was living in a place that was in a central location. But I always
Mhm.
wanted more for myself, and be careful what you wish for because that it just might happen. And I can remember I had to move back in with my parents because of financial reasons. And during this job, my job was downsizing, and I thought I'm going to give university a try. And I found a program that had the least amount of math and science possible, and it had disability accommodations, and a program that I loved. And I went in there and I used the accommodations. I had a note taker. I had extended test time on tests. I had tutoring when I needed it, and most importantly, I advocated for myself. I would introduce myself to new professors and tell them the services that I needed. And most of them were wonderful and did everything they could do to help me. I had a few that didn't quite get the memo. And there was still that stigma with disability accommodations with other peers. But I was just able to silence that and focus on what I needed to do to be a success.
As a teacher, as a parent, I've heard from lots of parents, and I've experienced this myself as a teacher, where sometimes as kids get older, they're really ashamed of the accommodations. They don't want to use them, and if
Yeah.
obviously they'll need them.
Mm.
So that shame or whatever, which it'll stop them from going where they want to go because they're not getting the support that they need. And so I just want to highlight, like, you were able to get your bachelor's degree, you're able to find a career that worked for you, um, be independent, but you did use those accommodations because you needed them and you advocated for yourself. So I really hope out there that kids and parents are helping kids to advocate for themselves because they do need those supports, right? It's not that there's something wrong
Mhm.
with you, it's you need extra support in certain areas, right? And all of us have something that we're not so good at. And
Yep,
trying to take that shame away and just really use what you need to get where you need to go is really important.
exactly.
This may what other people are worried about is that you said there's a stigma with your peers. Like, so some people saw you using something and they said some things, or what did that look like?
Yes, it did look like that. And this was actually in one of the classes where they were teaching about disabilities. And I had a peer that was saying, oh, they get extra time because they have a disability on a test. I wish I got that. They were saying, well, maybe I could use it with my allergies. And I'm hearing this and I have allergies myself. And that wasn't the reason why I was getting the extra time. I was getting it because I had a separate condition with having a learning disability. But I learned that, okay, somebody can think that, people can feel that. But it's just not worth my time and my energy to go out and try to convince people that I need this. I have to just go forward knowing this is what I need to do and take that action. And there's always going to be people that are going to think that I don't need it or they wish they had it. I can't control that.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said this and you talked about, how you dealt with that because, we don't know, right? A lot of times it's just
Yeah.
silent. The kid doesn't want the accommodation anymore. So they may
Yeah.
not tell us, Kim over there said something when I had, or they made a face or they were laughing or whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? They don't always
Yeah.
tell us. We just know, okay, they don't want to use it anymore, but obviously they need it. So how can we help them, And of course, they won't, sometimes they don't make it through their classes and everything, and they don't achieve their goals because they're worried about what someone is going to say. But it is their right. It is your right in learning to advocate for yourself and just move on. Like, you can't dwell on what other people are going to say when you're getting the things that you need.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, so tell us about your company now, Michelle's Mission.
Yes, I have a blog where I write about my life with having a learning disability, and I feature photography and a lot of nature metaphors on there. I might talk about the process of my accepting my disability like a flower that's unblooming, and I try to make it simple so people can understand that might have a disability. And I also make it simple so other people who may not understand learning disabilities understand have a knowledge of that as well. And I also have a store where I do put my photography. I take a lot of pictures because I'm not able to drive. Whenever I'm on my walks, I take pictures of flowers and other things in nature that inspire me. And that gives me that chance to stop and smell the roses and to notice details that I would miss if I was driving a vehicle too.
I'm just so glad, like, it's so wonderful to hear, like, you're able to be independent. Maybe you're not able to do this one thing, which,
Hmm.
just to tell you, Michelle, like, driving was the hardest thing that I I learned how to do. It really was. But also now my dream car, I don't really have a dream car, but it's a personal driver. So it's something that I don't want to
Yeah,
do.
don't blame you.
And there's lots of self-driving cars and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, just this one
Yes.
thing, of course, you know, is not a big thing to, from your life. You have so many things going on. You're also like publishing. Can you tell us about some of the writing that you've done and been published?
Sure. I have few stories published in two anthologies. I had a chance to write about one. It was called Rediscovering Your Story, and I went to a workshop where people talked about different things, and we had prompts. Some of the prompts were fun ones where we talked about our hair or our favorite place, but we also had the chance to talk about our the most important lesson we learned in our life. And it's available for purchase on Amazon. And I also had a story published last year about the theme was the baggage we carry. And I talked about some of the stuff with having a learning disability and some of the emotional baggage that comes with that. And that's for, I have that the link for that as well on my website. And I have another anthology that's tentatively coming out in the fall.
Okay.
And it's about just my experience with having a learning disability and growing in a garden with that.
All right. So we'll look out for that. All the links are in the show notes, so we'll take a look at that. Um,
Sure.
so can you tell us your website? Can you get you told us a little bit about Michelle's mission? Can you tell us the website and all of that?
Sure. My website is www.michellesmission.com, and on there you'll find my pictures from my adventures and my walks, and also just different blog articles where we get information.
The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook are your go to resource for helping kids to learn to fall in love with writing. It has the tips, tools, resources, strategies, and skill building activities to help kids fall out of writing hate and into loving to write. Get your book set today.
About having a learning disability.
Okay. All right. So when people are, what kind of advice, right, will you give to people who's they may be afraid to get tested or assessed? Like, you said when you were a little kid, your teacher was like, I think she may have a disability. But I have really spoken and worked with a lot of parents who are like, worried about that. Their kid may be behind, but they're worried, like, I don't want my kid labeled. I don't want this to be a burden in their life or like a barrier, right? Now that they've been identified or something like that.
I think first of all, if you are identified early, it becomes more of a lifestyle and you have a chance to adjust to that as being part of your life. I know very early on, just it was not always fun, it was not always easy, but that became a lifestyle. I knew that I was going to have to do things differently, and that gave me a realistic approach when I went to college. And whenever I even approached problems in my everyday life, that I knew that I was going to have certain accommodations. I also understood that I would need to have just different ways to be able to be a success in life. And my parents explained to me things in simple, age appropriate terms. They told me that I have a learning disability and that my brain works differently and learns differently.
Mhm.
And that was much better advice than I was hearing from my peers. A lot of my peers were telling me that I wasn't very smart. They were using a lot of unkind words to describe me.
Yeah.
And I just think that if I wouldn't have had that diagnosis and I wouldn't have had that help, I might have spent years struggling in school. My parents might have not weren't educated on what to do, and I could have been punished a lot more for bad grades or things like that. And I don't know if I would have been able to go as far as I have with having that confidence and that knowledge of myself.
That is, it's so important that you brought that up. I'm so glad that, hopefully people are really taking those words to heart, right? Um, that
Hmm.
getting diagnosed early, like finding out what the problem is, being able to name what it is that's the issue, and then as you grew, right, you're learning how to adapt and you're able to advocate for yourself. You're able to pinpoint what the issue is.
Hmm.
And so that's so much better than like, I'm just struggling and I don't know why I'm
Yeah,
struggling, which is just frustration,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So getting the help, getting the support, help, and you're crediting that to your success today. And so I think, people really need to think about it that way. Like, how can we get help? Right. And so, it it's really heartbreaking when we have kids who are behind, but the parents don't want to get them support. They're worried. And everyone's heart is in the right place, right? Trying to protect the
Right.
child from being labeled or whatever they think that means. But um the reality is, like you're saying, like you're gonna struggle, but if you have a way to address that struggle, you've got supports in place, like that you
Yeah.
could always reach out and get and have, then you're gonna do better than just being, behind with no end in sight. Like there's nothing, there's no definition, there's
Yeah.
no solution.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's nothing
Hmm.
documenting because sometimes teachers or whatever or people don't want to give you the extra, but if it's documented, it's like, no, I'm required, I am
Right.
it's my rights to have this extra support, this extra time or whatever. So it means a lot. We just have to, I know it's hard. We all like love our kids. We all want the best for them, and we don't always know if this new thing coming in or someone testing them or whatever
Right.
is going to be the right thing for them.
Right, exactly. It's just knowing that it is having that as something that they need, and it's documented, and that way they have to follow through with that.
It holds people accountable for giving you the support that you need as well. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
also important for parents to know that just like as a parent, you could say, no, I don't want my child assessed. Once your child is assessed, you still have control over like what kind of supports they need. If you don't feel like there's enough there or enough support, you can say, look,
Right,
this isn't working. I need you to do something better. I need you to do, so you have more
right.
control. It's not like just out of your hands once your child is gets the individualized education plan. Like you still have rights and you get a say
Yes,
so about their placement and all kinds of things. So um, it's a tool to be used for the benefit of the child. So sometimes people don't understand that because it's just unknown. They haven't been in it, you know.
exactly. Yeah, of course.
What were there some changes over the years that you had to make, or added accommodations or different things like that that you needed that you had to advocate for?
Some of the things that I really had to make, I didn't have a note taker when I was in all my years of school. So that's one of the things I had at college. I also had an additional diagnosis of limited hand dexterity in both of my hands. So that's been an adjustment, but the lights went off after I figured out that. So basically, sometimes what some of the things that I've had to do, that's actually what inspired me to write my first article, was my struggle to open up doors and being able
Mm-hmm.
to open up my door. I was so frustrated when we moved into our home. I couldn't open up our front door with my hands. And I wrote an article on the Mighty, and it got published, and I had a great response. But some of the things I've had to do is I have like a key helper that helps me be able to open a door. I have jar openers and bottle openers for things if I can't open up a jar. Those are a few things that I can do. And um, definitely with having a phone, it's a lot of the technology too. If I'm out in public and I need to leave a tip, I can use my phone to do that. So I think that's
Right.
some of the things that we've adjusted. Typing has been a big thing too. Instead of handwriting, I think that helps out if someone wants to read what I have to say. And there's things that I can sign like documents online rather than having someone try to figure out my signature as well.
That is so good that you brought up those things. And I think the door handle is such a common thing that we all open. It's
Hmm.
so easy, quote unquote, for a lot of people
Yeah.
that, you understand like you need to give them access. Like if this person's not able to open it, then give them support they need. And the same thing for the academics. Like if they need support with
Hmm.
note taking or something like that, please give them that support so they could access it. So,
Yeah.
that's something I feel like people maybe can relate to more because they don't understand. Like, "Oh, that's so simple, but not for everyone, right? And people needing
Exactly.
support to get inside of a door is so essential. But something that maybe people could think about, make them really think like, okay, no, this person does need some extra support, and it's okay, right? It's okay.
Right.
All right. What we want to also talk about is like what's coming up next for you? Like, is coming up for next for you?
I would definitely love to increase my blog, definitely in more speaking arrangements to be able to share my story. And I would also like to have a book in the future about my life, a memoir.
Where can we find you? Like on social? We heard about your website. What about on social
Mhm.
media? What platforms are you
You,
on?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, great. And again, that will be in the show notes for everyone to see. You can reach out to Michelle. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on the Falling for Learning podcast. Are there any like last words that you want to give of advice to educators or parents out there watching or listening to the show?
I would just probably say to really encourage students to advocate. I know that I work as a paraeducator in a school, and I always encourage my students to advocate because someday our students are going to leave us and
Mm,
they're going to graduate, and hopefully they'll be able to achieve every single dream that they have. But it's really, for so many of them, their disability isn't going to leave them. So it's so important that they know how to advocate and speak up for themselves.
okay. Thank you so much. Do something today that's going to give your child a competitive advantage. Thank you for joining us. Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.